name is Nick Sermonaro, and I like to climb and base jump in the mountains. Growing up in a small town like Scranton, being 2 hours away from New York City, it was always kind of a dream, I think, what was depicted in movies and TV shows that, people that lived in the big city lived that lifestyle. And so I moved out there kind of to pursue that. And I enjoyed the city for what it was and lived there for 6 years and had a lot of fun. But really, when it boils down, it was a lot of drinking and partying and expensive dinners. But I wasn't finding fulfillment in that, and I wasn't getting what I was looking for in my life. And I would every night would watch videos of people flying wingsuits in the mountains like over and over again, and I would fall asleep to that at night, watching people live what my dream was. And I didn't know the clear path or the way to get there, but I knew that was the most incredible thing that I've ever seen a human being do, was fly a wingsuit 150 miles an hour down the side of a mountain. When people see it, I know even now when people see it, they think like, oh, it's so far from what I could do or something I could ever do, but it's not. It's just a matter of putting in the time, the energy, and the effort into learning that skill and that trade. So it's not unobtainable by any means. It just requires a ton of time, energy, and focus, like anything else in life.
Do you remember any of the videos that you would watch?
Oh yeah, I watched videos of people jumping in Italy and at Brento and in Norway. I think at a certain point I had watched every video that was about wingsuit base jumping on the internet, and it just continued to instill in me that was really what my dream and my passion was. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to go from where I was, which was 300 pounds, living in New York City, to a person who's mountaineering in the mountains, climbing, base jumping. I mean, it was totally foreign lifestyle that I really had no conception of or how it worked or how people did it.
Was this always something in the back of your mind that you wanted to do?
No, so I don't think there was an aha moment. I think it was something that just kind of like, it was like grinding on me for years and years and years. And I had a good friend whose dad was a pretty avid skydiver, Pat Dunleavy. And Pat, anytime I'd ask Pat and say, hey, I really want to, get my skydiving license and start skydiving. I mean, this went on for like 10 years with Pat. And I would say, like, I really want to do it. And he would be like, yep, all you got to do is just come up and, do the jumps. And at the time, like, I'd put on weight really since like from college while I was living in New York. Every year I put on a few, 10 pounds or something like that. And it got to the point where I was 300 pounds and I was living in New York. And I wasn't in any kind of shape to be skydiving or let alone, climbing or base jumping in the mountains. So, Pat really kind of gave me that realization. We were on a trip and I remember exactly where we were. We're in the pool at the hotel we were staying at. And we're talking and I said to Pat, I really want to get into skydiving. And he said, if you want to get into skydiving, you're going to have to lose some weight. And I said, Pat, I'm serious, I really want to get into it. And I think at the time he had heard that so many times from me that he was like, yeah, okay, you got to lose some weight. You're not really going to, you don't really care. And honestly, I think that in some way, I think he motivated me by kind of like dismissing me for what that I'm going to do it. I think he might have motivated me to be like, oh yeah, okay. And it was that summer where I started, changed my diet and moved to a ketogenic diet, lost, 100 pounds in 8 months and made my first skydive. And, it's been 1,400 jumps, 4 years of my life and, never the same.
long did it take you while you were living in the city to start having thoughts about leaving?
I think the first probably 2 or 3 years, I was really committed. And then I think it was that like 5th or 6th year where things really started to set in and started to realize like, wow, this isn't real life. And this isn't everything that the world has to offer. This is one small, city. Even though New York is massive, it's still just one city in the grand scheme. And I think that it faded as time went on, So I think the last 2 years or so, I really was enjoying it, but kind of sick of the excessive consumption. I was making extra money just so that I could spend it to live in that city. It didn't really make sense. And every time I traveled or left the city, I found more fulfillment and joy being away from the city. And when I would go back, it just meant I had to go back to work,
Do you have any regrets about leaving the city?
No, especially after COVID. I think that it was kind of like foresight. I left about 1.5 years before COVID. So no, I think that was the best thing I ever did, and I wouldn't be doing any of the stuff that I did in the last 4 or 5 years if I lived in the city.
So you leave New York, you come back to Pennsylvania. What are some of the first things that you do?
The first thing was, living in the city, living in an apartment for the last 6 years, being crammed in, 600, 800 square feet. I wanted to get some space. So I found a house, bought a house, and started, to remodel it and clean it up. And that was really like the main focus initially, and I started working on that. But at that point, when I first got back to Pennsylvania, I'm 300 pounds, right? So I've got a lot of work to do to get down to the weight that I want to be to start skydiving, or the weight that I need to be to start skydiving. That was really the main focus, was like get in shape, get set up with a place to live that I own and not renting from somebody and just throwing that money away. And then start pursuing the things that are going to make me fulfill my life, more so than just pursuing that more consumption, because the thing that I learned in New York about pursuit is that consumption is an endless pursuit. You'll never ever get there. There's always something more expensive or more extravagant that you could go after. Whereas some of the experiences and the relationships that I've built over the past few years have really are things that money can't buy, and there's nothing that could ever replace some of those experiences. When you're sitting on in a cave on the edge of a cliff 2,500 feet up in Switzerland, waiting for the clouds to clear before you can jump. It's not an experience that you can even really relate to as a person living in New York City. As I lost the weight and I got more energy from losing the weight, and I started working out, and I started swimming pretty heavily and got into triathlons, I started to find that I had a lot more energy, which gave me a lot more opportunity to pursue the things that I was passionate in. So instead of going to work and being exhausted by 3-4 o'clock and wanting to go home after work at 3 or 4 o'clock, I would leave, drive up to the airport where I was learning how to skydive, and I would jump with them until sunset, learn how to pack parachutes until 10 p.m. We'd go get something to eat, and I'd go home, go to bed, and I would do it again for 7 days a week, And I think that really what drove me or gave me that drive to do that was that I changed my diet, was eating healthier, lost the weight, was in better physical shape. And all of those things, and exercising regularly, really put me in a position where I could go 15, 16 hours a day.
How long did it take you to start seeing results in terms of the weight loss and physical activity?
For me, it was really quick. I lost 40 or 50 pounds in the first 4 months. So it really fell off. And then by that weight falling off, I think that gave me the energy and the drive to pursue more exercising too. So initially it was purely just diet, and that the weight kind of just fell off. And then the last, say, 30 or 40 pounds was a combination of exercise and diet. So, I think results were driving that, right? You see results, and, you just want to keep pursuing that. And I usually, when I find something or get something that I like to, to go pretty heavy into it and sink my teeth into it. And I think the same thing happened with the diet, same thing that happened with skydiving, and, anything that I've really pursued,
Can you talk a little bit about how the obsession with skydiving progressed? How do you get to the point where you're like, oh, I want to do this I want to do like 100 jumps a year or something like that? Like, how do you get to
Yeah. So initially, when I first started, my goal was to get my skydiving license that summer. It takes a minimum of 25 skydives to get your skydiving license. So I was thinking, okay, I was planning out. I'm like, well, if I make, one jump a week on average, I'll have my skydiving license by the end of the summer. And the group Endless Mountain that I got my license with, and mainly Tom Cavage, who taught me how to skydive, when I brought that to him, he's like, oh man, we could get your skydiving license knocked out in a lot faster than a summer. And I was like, oh, okay, great, So initially my goal for that year was to make 25 jumps and get my skydiving license, and for sure do that. And really, in the same way that I got into the diet and really sunk my teeth into it, I made the first jump in April, and I had my skydiving license by May. And then I remember saying to Pat Dunleavy that my goal at that point, once I got my license, was to try to get to 100 jumps for the season. And I thought he said, that's a lot of jumps. You'd really have to, kind of like another situation where, and I don't think he doubted me, but another situation where he kind of questioned, like, are you sure you could really do that? And I think at that point, he just kind of like lit that fire in me to be like, oh yeah, I definitely could. So by May, I had my skydiving license and 25 jumps. And by June, I did my 100th skydive, and I did my first demo jump in front of a crowd of 700 or 800 people. So things were progressing really, really quickly. My goal really was in 2 years to get 200 jumps, because in skydiving, the rule is you need 200 skydives before you can start flying a wingsuit out of an airplane. So all I was focused on was, how do I get to 200? I want to get in that wingsuit. That was the dream, right? To fly a wingsuit. So that season, I get to June, and I'm like, wow, I already have 100 jumps. And I'm like, man, this 200 jump thing, this might be possible this season. So I ended up finishing out the skydiving season in November with 290 some skydives. I had taken a base jumping course in Twin Falls, and I was kind of already about 3 years or 4 years ahead of the pace that I initially was anticipating that I was going to be on. So things were escalating pretty quickly.
So was skydiving just a means to get to base jumping and wingsuiting? Like, was that always the goal, or did you fall in love with skydiving also along the way?
Yeah, so initially all I would talk about, the first day that I had called Tom Cavage, I was like, listen, my goal is to go fly a wingsuit in Brento. I mean, that was like dead set. And first thing he said to me was, that's my dream too. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. What are the odds, And I think that was kind of an awesome moment between us, that we shared that dream together. So I really, Tom and I were very, very close. We worked together, every day we talked, and he'd let me know, hey, the weather looks good. We're going to, try to get a jump in at 6:00. Can you be here? And really he was my mentor and my advocate for that first year, to really get me through what I needed. And when it came to, like, if I needed any kind of gear, Tom would be right there with a rig for me or whatever it was. My first couple wingsuits, his son sent them up for me. His son Brian sent them up for me to use for free. And just amazing people. I think skydiving for me was always the means to get to base jumping, to get to the place I wanted to be in Brento. Because skydiving is the place where you can train and practice all these maneuvers that you're going to do on a base jump, but it's a lot safer. You have 2 parachutes, you're getting out of a plane, you're much higher up, you're not very close to the ground, when you're skydiving. So it really is a great training ground. And through that process of learning how to skydive, I fell in love with skydiving with my friends, with skydiving, even doing solos, or just jumping in general, and just flying the canopy. I love the peace that you get up in the air when it's just you, a parachute, and you got a 10-minute canopy ride back down to earth. It's incredible.
How important do you think it is to have mentors or models to look up to?
So I think it's anybody who doesn't to get into the base jumping world is an extremely dangerous in an extremely dangerous world. There's so much information that base jumpers have gathered over the last 35, 40 years of people jumping. There's so many examples of people who have made mistakes and done things that, they were honest mistakes and they didn't intentionally do it. But in our sport, there's so much risk. The goal is to mitigate as much of that risk as possible. And we do that by reviewing and analyzing any injury or death that happens in the sport. We take very, very serious care to figure out what were the factors, what risks, caused that. And that helps, us learn and grow and become safer when it comes to base jumping. So anybody who's trying to go about this without a mentor is putting themselves at a significantly higher risk, and for no reason. Because in the sport, what I've found is that the mentors, I've had some incredible mentors, and almost all of those mentors were happy to help me for free. And if they did want a fee, it was nominal, just for their expenses or their cost to be there. So it's not like there's no money in base jumping or skydiving. It's not a profitable endeavor to be a mentor for somebody for that. You do it because you want to see people be safe, and you want to see people grow in the sport that you love and want to be a good ambassador of. So yeah, I think anybody that's considering any of this, whether it's skydiving or it's base jumping, a mentor is probably the most important piece. I wouldn't have done half or even a quarter of any of the things I've done today without incredible mentorship.
Good one.
Enjoy.
3, 2, 1. Clean, buddy. Nice. Yep. Nice, Nick. Good speed, buddy. Fuck yes. He's killing it.
Can you talk a little bit about how some of the opportunities that have sort of just like organically arisen?
Yeah. So, I mean, I never considered any of these things. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I wouldn't say I shied away from opportunities like this either, but what I've found is, and in life, what I've found is that there's two types of people that are successful in life. There's people that can do things that other people can't do. And that's one group of people. That's your, athletes, people that are 6'8" and can dunk a basketball, or a football player who's, 280 pounds and can run a 4.8. That's an incredible talent that someone has. And those people are, can be successful with their talent. And there's only one other group of people that are successful in life, and it's people who are willing to do what other people aren't willing to do. And I find myself in that category more often than not in the base jumping world and in the skydiving world. I think the opportunities that I've got have really opened up because I was willing to do things that other people weren't willing to do, and I was willing to put time in that other people weren't willing to put time in. So opportunity wise, I mean, I've probably jumped into over 100 different events, and been paid to jump into different places. And I think the most fun that I have is I do a bunch of different kids camps in the summer, and we go up to this camp and jump in front of 1,000 kids at a kids camp, and it's the most exciting thing that they've seen all summer long, and they look forward to it. They talk about it. I've been doing it for a few years now, and they talk about it each year. The kids from the year before tell them that, hey, this people are going to come in a plane and jump out and land into the camp, and it's unbelievable to some of these kids, And a lot of these kids are kids that live in the city, and they go out to these camps for the summer to experience the outdoors. And it's cool that I get to share my passion with these kids, and they love it, and I think that's one of the most rewarding, things.
So skydiving, base jumping, wingsuiting, what's next?
Climbing is definitely the next endeavor for me. I've recently hurt myself on a climb in Thailand, and I think that, like anything in life, you hopefully learn from your mistakes. And the biggest mistake I made on that trip was that I wasn't prepared for the climb that I was attempting, and I think it really challenged the way I think about some of the stuff that I'm doing and how I'm approaching it. And I think the new still wingsuiting and base jumping is definitely my passion, but I want to do it from the largest mountains in the world. And to get there and get to the tops of those largest mountains in the world, you need to be a good climber and a good mountaineer. And that's really, I think, the next area that I want to pursue.
Okay, you
and,
got this.
you know, to challenge myself, you know, and I think the mountains are incredible because there's unlimited challenge in the mountains, you know, and I think that's something that draws me too. Is I like doing things that are hard. I think that's one of the biggest things that I love about base jumping, is that if it were easy, everybody would do it. You know, it's incredible, but some of these things are, you know, very hard and very, you know, just finding just being able to find a mentor who will take you to some of these spots to go base jump is a job, you know, and each step and each thing you have to learn is really, you need to put time into it, and you put time into it because your life depends on it, you know. It's not a game like, you know, you play a soccer game and you lose, you know, it's okay, it's, you know, hey, you lost, is no good. I mean, in base jumping, you know, when you make a mistake, it's usually a fatal mistake, you know. You don't usually get multiple times to make the same mistake. So it's a very serious sport in that sense, but it's also extremely rewarding when you prepare and you're ready for that jump and you perform the way that, you know, you anticipated you would. It's one of the most euphoric feelings I've ever felt in my life.
God.